Well, hello artists. Today we're going to talk about how to start getting your images from the internet, appropriating them and getting them into your image so that you can start creating your digital collage. So first up, if you haven't already done the layers and selections videos, make sure you finish those as well as the creating a texture layer video, because that will come in handy. So once you have your document set up, the next step is to start to collect your images that you are going to be altering, editing, and making selections and cutting out. All right, so you have your background layer. The first step is to go to the internet and go to Google, and you're going to do a simple Google image search. Remember, the topic is of your choosing, so you can pick any topic that you're interested in. Just make sure it's school appropriate, and then start Googling your heart away. So if I'm looking for a moth image, we're going to scroll through. Obviously, the ones that are on a flat background are going to be the easiest to make selections, but you can pick from any old ones you want. And then you're simply going to right-click and copy. You're going to come back into Photoshop, and you're going to paste, either using the keyboard shortcut of Control-V, or you can go up to Edit Paste. I would spend a couple days just doing that, going back to the internet and pasting on a bunch of different images. As you can see, I have lots and lots and lots here. You may or may not use these. You're just starting to get all of your images onto your board. Then the next step is to decide how you're going to make selections or make use of these. Now, I can leave this intact and leave the white square out, or I can decide I want to get rid of the white around the moth using one of the selection methods I know how and hitting that delete key to erase it, or I can make unconventional selection. So I might maybe use the circle instead. Maybe I'm going to do just a small part. How do I cut away? Remember, if I want to cut away what's around it, I'm going to inverse that selection. So I'm going to inverse it, and then I'll hit that delete key. So I don't have to do a standard around the body selection, but if I wanted to, obviously I would use those freehand tools, the lasso tools, to do that, or I could even be more creative and maybe I could just do an irregular selection if I want it to look a little bit more like a traditional paper. And again, I'm inversing my selection and hitting that delete key. So however you want to get those images cut out, I would do that, or like I said, you use a lasso tool and you do a really good job. I'm going really fast. Adding and subtracting, making good selections. And again, notice I'm just inversing the selection and then hitting that delete key to cut them out, okay? Beyond pulling from the internet, remember you can also pull images from my digital image archive folder, and I have a lot that you might want to look through. So just a couple of note is there's one called the human body that's got some really cool illustrations in it. The maps one is nice because it has some basic map graphics. There's one actually called the bacteria folder, which is kind of crazy. There's a patterns folder. There's a scrapbook folder that has some interesting materials in there, as well as, of course, the texture folder that you're now aware of because you did that creating a texture layer video, right? Then you're ready to get started. So you should be starting from a flat background. Now it might be white, or you could fill it a color. It's up to you. You could also decide that you want to put a texture in there of some kind. Again, also up to you. And then you're just going to start playing around. When I say play around, it means literally resizing things, changing the color of things, reordering and rearranging them, not just with the transforming tool, but also in your layers palette about where they're going to be stacking. Before you start kind of moving your bits and pieces around and making decisions, I would go back and refer to the slide presentation that was created and look at the examples of good design and see what they're doing. Notice that each one of them is going to have a center of interest. So one part of the collage that's a little bit more interesting. They also have a lot of repetition and unity in their colors. Okay, so using those image adjustment commands to tweak and change colors. Also repetition of shapes, making similar types of selections. They also might have pattern work in there. They might have some graphic elements. So just go through and kind of look at how they're arranging their compositions and take some ideas. It's okay to steal and tweak ideas. That's what artists do. If you like how they did the cutout here, go for it. If you want to use some text, you can. All of these things are fair game. But the key here is to just play. That's the nice thing about Photoshop, is I can have all of these layers and decide later I don't want to use them. Perfectly fine. And you will do that until you have, try and turn all my layers back on that I like, a composition that you like. You must have 5 layers minimum by the time you're done that are visible. You have to have a layer effect somewhere on there. I would also suggest possibly working with the color modes. So remember, you can change or use those layer modes, excuse me, to change your color. So you can see here I'm using one, and that's a lot of playing around. Make sure you're using repetition of color and texture, as I just said, and make sure that you are using some of the other advanced filters like shapes and simple textures and lines in there to pull it all together. There's no one way to do this. Have some fun and make sure you use your time wisely in here. And if you have questions, make sure you see me, and I will come around quite frequently during this lesson to give you some critique and some suggestions.